Hello and welcome everyone to the Scripted Writers AMA. My name is John Parr. I am the writer community manager here at Scripted, and I am joined by.
Hi, I'm Chris Baker. I'm the quality assurance manager, um, and we kind of work together on a lot of stuff despite having separate areas. So,
Yeah, super excited to do this again. We did this last time. It was actually a lot of fun. It was great to talk to a lot of writers, and I'm sure for you guys as well, probably interesting to put some faces to names, and same for us as well. And I know when we have Scripted's very own, we have
hi,
Scripted's
Liz.
very own Elizabeth here, joining us in the comments. Yeah, so let's get this thing started off. I'd say we've got a little bit of a slideshow, which super exciting. Everyone loves slideshows, and we love them so much that ours is only 3 slides long. Um, and so what we're going to do is we're going to first talk about a couple of things that are new unscripted since the last time that we met, which I guess was what, Chris, like December?
I want to say November,
Yeah, yeah, it could have been.
late
Um,
November, I think.
yeah, no, you're right. God, feels forever ago.
It's
Uh,
we entered a time warp like 2 years ago. I think we can all
yeah,
agree.
we're living in this new timeline. Um, but yeah, quite a bit has happened since then. So let's take a quick look into what we have. I think the first thing that we wanted to touch on is the always popular deadlines. And Chris, you want to tell everyone a little bit about this and what's happening here?
Yeah, for sure. So, and by the way, if anybody wants to take like screenshots or whatever for your own reference or to follow up, support at Scripted.com, ask some more questions. We're more than happy to do that. So, um, we've made some changes to deadlines, and that's across the board. And we've also simultaneously introduced uh, the concept of a priority and a rush job, in addition to just the standard job. So we're still kind of tweaking that. So we have some changes that we're going to make to the changes over the next few days, next week, and so forth. And we'll continue to take feedback and adapt as necessary. But so right now, and this is mainly I'm talking to the writers here. The new default for all jobs is 2 days, and I'll stop right there. What does that mean? That means that from the time that you pick up, accept a job, whether it's a smart match, whether you're starting a proposal, whatever it is, you have 48 hours to get that first draft back. So, and everybody knows that's the bulk of the work. That's what takes the most time is that first draft. So, it used to be 3 days. We're moving that down to 2. But here's what you gain next to that, right? So we're now excluding weekends along with the holidays. So when we say anything in a standard job, when you see deadlines, that's business hours. We're going to be implementing these changes probably at some point later this week or potentially early next week. We'll have more on that as it develops. Our devs are working on this as we speak. So right now it's 3 days, but weekends are included. So we're going to be shifting to 2 days, excluding weekends and major U.S. holidays. And John and I were talking about this while we were working on this earlier. We really want to make it clear that it's still the same kind of policy if you're a writer of when you submit that first draft, you're still on kind of notice for those revisions to come back, right? So it's not you've done the first draft, you send it, and you're good. There's a 12-hour window there where revisions can come back from the copy editor, and then even beyond that, back from the client or customer. But again, this is now going to exclude weekends. So we've tightened up the deadlines a bit across the board, even more so with these new priority and rush jobs. But for the bulk of the jobs that you're going to see, the standard jobs, excluding weekends. Now, with the priority and the rush jobs, the base deadline, which is the same thing as the 2-day thing up ahead or up above for the standard jobs, 36 hours for that first draft if it's a priority job, 12 hours if it's a rush job. You will be able to tell what kind of job it is in Scripted. We're still kind of tweaking how it looks, but even right now, you'll be able to differentiate between a standard job, priority job, rush job, and of course with these quicker ones, you don't get the weekend holiday pass there. But our hope here is as we implement this and then refine it and take your guys' feedback, that you have a choice that's actually meaningful, right? For those of you that don't want to be working after hours on weekends, etc., you don't have to, and likewise the customers that maybe don't need that kind of a rush can do that, and then the other options there as well for faster things there. So
Yeah, well, and also too, these priority and rush jobs also pay more. So there's also the benefit of
exactly.
that, which makes a bit of a difference as well. As for some other stuff too, so which is appropriately titled "Other Fun Stuff." One big thing: industry applications can now be done on app. For any writers who are here tonight who have been on Scripted for some time, you know that process has been like living in a Google form and then all kinds of other things. The rule now is you just have to have a writing sample that is relevant to that industry, and you can apply for it right there on the app. Much more straightforward. I think it's going to make things a lot easier. And that's also going to be kind of interesting for something we're going to talk about on this next slide here before we dive into the questions and answers. But in addition to that, we also have templates. So you may have seen these already. If you go to the word processor on Scripted and you go to format, you'll be able to, or actually I think it's insert. If you go to insert, it's insert. You go there, you bring up the templates, and then you can actually bring up templates by type. So if you're working on a blog post or a Twitter post, we can provide sort of a general format for you to follow to make sure that you're always kind of within the realm of what the expectations are. And then finally, format badges. So a few writers already have these, nowhere near as many as we'd like. That's because it's brand new. So you'll probably be getting some messages about this pretty soon. And what that is pertaining to is it allows you to get a badge on your profile that pertains to any special format that you excel at. So if you are an expert in white papers, you might end up getting that badge on your portfolio. And that's important too, because a lot of clients are looking for writers who maybe have a particular specialization. And then finally, what's next? So one big thing, I don't want to go too into it, as you know, of course, you'll be hearing about this in the next 3 months, but we also have plenty of work to do on it, is sub-industries. So quick way to explain those. Let's say that you are in art and design, right? Well, obviously fine art is different than interior design. And for a client who is looking for content that's specifically about interior design, someone who just has this art industry on their portfolio may not actually pertain to what they're looking for. So these will be a little bit more granular and provide obviously even more opportunities for you to link directly with clients who are looking for a really specific skill set. And then Chris, why don't you tell them a little bit about the certification system that we're planning to?
Yeah, sure. So we're developing we're calling it a certification system, kind of for shorthand. What it basically means is Scripted is going to have a way for you as a writer and or editor to take courses that are approved and or developed by us that are in the system, integrated into Scripted. And once you take those courses and you receive that certificate of completion or whatever it is, then that becomes a something that's on your profile, in the sense that you're certified or that you've gone through that process. How we use that going forward, that's not been entirely developed yet. We do know that it's going to be a value add across the board, and more importantly, much like everything from industries to badges to everything else that we do, right? All of these things can be used and have been and will be used in the system to help match writers with jobs and customers.
Yeah, and that's pretty much one of the core functions of the certification. The other beautiful thing is once that's done, you can share that. You can actually kind of use that as sort of an own accolade for yourself as a freelancer, because we're going to be partnering as well with, can't really say yet, but more like actually I do know, but I'm not going to tell you just yet. And basically with our partner, you'll be able to kind of use that as well. We're going to be getting somebody that's well known for their certifications, and we'll be offering them to writers, usually around gold tier. And then finally, improved writer search. This is something a lot of writers don't know, but we are working constantly right now on making the search function better for clients, which means they're going to be able to find you easier. And that is going to, of course, mean more jobs for you. So that's it for us on slides. But obviously, there's plenty of other new things. If you read the writer newsletter, I'll be adding some more of those. We just kind of wanted to touch on these kind of big ones that are happening, and we're definitely super excited about these subcategories that are going to be happening as well, as I think that's going to make a pretty big difference for a lot of writers who might be getting lost in the fold. But yeah, we're here for the AMA. Let's go for some questions. Chris, you want to rattle this one off here?
Oh yeah, that's what I suppose. Like, we did tell them to ask us anything.
That's right.
Okay, Casey says, when you say business hours, could deadlines still be something like 2 a.m.?
You know, this, I think you are the most qualified to answer this. You
is,
were telling me about this maybe 2 hours ago.
I think, yeah, this seems familiar.
I think you can share a little bit about what's being planned.
Yeah, I can, because that's, yeah. So it's a fantastic question because of the changes we're making to the deadlines, and the fact that we're implementing these priority and rush jobs. Also, for anybody who's watching, and got in on the early news of all this, I do want to apologize. It is priority and rush. So we had, as software companies tend to do, a lot of different iterations of the feature before it became the final version. And so the names of those jobs changed over time. So in any event, we have standard, priority, and rush. So business hours, right? Could a deadline still be something like 2 a.m.? If it was implemented right now as is and just left without any changes, yes. So while we're developing these improvements, just watch your deadlines very closely. Send in a ticket. Do what you got to do. We can push those deadlines out, no problem. But one thing that we are working on and will be implemented very soon is going to be if a job would come back to you past 10 p.m. your time, it'll get pushed out to something like 10 a.m. the next day. We haven't quite figured out the finer details yet, but once we get that solidified, this very, very soon is a priority to make sure, not just for not having a job you do while you're asleep in the middle of the night, but to take into account people who are working in different time zones other than just U.S. time zones. So I guess the short answer would be right now, yes. So watch your stuff because its construction is happening. But very soon the answer will be no.
And also worth noting too, I think we talked about this on the last AMA, and if you're a writer on Scripted and you've talked to me, I probably have mentioned this to you at some point, but it is important to also not think of your deadlines as the last hour that you can start working on your thing, you know? So while the deadline may end up being at 2 a.m., as we mentioned before, some of those deadlines are 12 hours. There's still an 11-hour period before that deadline. So yes, we're going to work on making sure that that's not a thing, that no one's going to have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to work on a deadline. We recognize that's crazy. Obviously, we love our writers. We're not going to enforce that. But on the other hand, it is important to also hold up your end of the deal and ideally start it sooner than the deadline itself. Not you specifically, Casey. You're a new writer, I believe. So I don't think that applies quite yet. But
I mean, look, we all went to college. I mean, maybe not. I mean, we all went to high school, college, right? We're all used to the idea of starting something the night before or like a couple hours before. But sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. It certainly doesn't work when you're trying to build professional relationships on a content writing platform.
Yeah, I mean, listen. Here's the thing. We've seen it before, and we've talked about it before. I believe even maybe it was on the Scripted podcast or here, but I think that there's like this thing in writer culture. You know, I know it, you know it from being writers, where like it's the sort of like, oh, deadlines. You know, it's kind of the got a case of the Mondays, you know, of writing. And I think that like I think
What a
as writers,
buzzkill, right?
right? Yeah, and I think in terms of like to become better writers, we can probably start being a little more mindful of them and getting in front of them. It's better to do it anyway. I think it provides more opportunity. It also looks good for your clients. And honestly, you know, from the two of us working internally, speaking to the writers here, we hear about it every time a writer like returns something fast. It comes right back to us. So it looks good, and they want more of that writer. But anyway, we're not here
That's
to lecture on deadlines.
That's important, though. I'm going to pick at that real quick because
Okay.
we hear right. I've sent out stuff. We talk. There's so much in the space about like what's bad. Don't do this. That's the thing that's good. Do it. We're paying attention to the stuff that's like bad that's happening, but we're also paying attention to stuff that's good. So there's an incentive there.
Very true. Ah, why don't we do the old we'll do like a back and forth.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll read this one.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, from Alexandra. Can we apply for more than 3 industries we were previously restricted to? So here's the thing with this. I'll take this one just
Good
because
question.
I've been heading up this one, yeah, for a while. Right now, no. In the future, yes. The reason for that is not because we're just being needlessly restrictive. It's because, and especially for a lot of writers who might be listening who have been on Scripted for a long time, we have quite a few industry collectors. You know, we've got people who seemingly have become the jack of literally all trades and have like maybe 15 to 20 industries. Those needed to get pared down. And then once we did pare those down, we realized that, you know, it's probably better to have a focus. So as you know, we rolled that out. I think that was like at the end of last year. We're still paring down some writers who haven't done it. But the game plan there is to essentially get that pared down, and then we're going to take a look at it and then allow people by tier to add more industries. So, you know, if you're gold or platinum, you may be able to add more industries than say a silver writer will. So, yeah, for right now, it's just going to be the 3. But also, I want to note that if you have 3 and say you're not entirely sure that you're happy with your pick, you can replace them too. So feel free to send us an email, support@scripted.com. As you guys know, you'll most likely get me or Chris, and I'll be happy to get those replaced for you with one that's a better fit.
On that subject, because this is something that is like important to the writers and editors as part of their profile. Any questions you guys have about your profile, especially if you're newer, definitely reach out. There's ways that you can optimize your profile that kind of get lost in the shuffle sometimes, especially early on. You know, and if you're jumping right in, getting work, that's great. But thinking long term, and especially with putting your kind of star roster of writing samples, especially on your profile. And the reason for that is not just with industries, not just with the badges that we're going to be talking about, not just with these cool features that categorize you and help make you more relevant, but customers are searching for you, account managers are searching for you to give you work. And the more that you have your profile done from your bio to a nice picture to everything like that, but especially samples that really showcase something that you're capable of and that you're proud to show off and put your name on, that is also a big help too.
100%. Yeah, let me just underline that, and maybe like a red marker too, we'll put under that. I think that if you say, let's say on your portfolio, this is if you're a new writer, this is a very important tip here. Let's say in your portfolio, you're like, hey, my name is John. I write about crypto and crayons and dogs. You're going to want to make sure that you have a writing sample pertaining to crypto, crayons, and dogs. and good luck on the crayons one. But the point being, you have to have those writing samples present. We actually hear that from clients from time to time, like super excited. They found a writer. It feels like the right fit. They mentioned having experience maybe in their proposal, and then the client will go there and it's like, oh, cool. Here's a piece about, top 10 best restaurants to eat in Italy. And it just doesn't help connect. So, I know that a lot of, especially veteran writers, feel like they'll put up 3 of their favorite pieces and call it a day. But you'd be surprised how often, like, we hear that. As in, I heard it this afternoon. We hear it constantly. It is definitely one of the biggest needs, I think, from clients. So worth doing. Got a little bit off base for the question, but I just want to say, yes, soon you'll be able to apply for more than 3 industries. But if you want to replace them, just let us know.
All right, another one from Casey here. By the way, just hello to, of course, we already said Liz was here and Alexandra had a question there, but also to Adrienne, to Jennifer, Esther, Michelle, I see you here too, Dion, and this is great. So
look at you. This is like a Twitch stream now.
This is like, yeah. We'll put our Patreon link up in a second.
Patreon, scripted Patreon.
Yeah. So is there an average time to reach platinum level among those who've made it to that tier? This is probably something I'll pass back to John, because he's kind of managed this and done these levels for a lot longer than I have. I will say that when I onboard people, I tell them about the gaps between each level. And the smallest one is between bronze and silver, right? You do one job, it's accepted. You did the thing, and you got your gold sticker. Cool, you're silver now. And then silver to gold, of course, in our FAQs, John has a great 60 days to gold kind of roadmap. And then after that, the gold to platinum one is kind of a little bit more obscure. So I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it there. One thing I do want to clarify is I think that there is sometimes a misconception, and maybe that's because of this article that I wrote, which is the sort of how to get to gold in 60 days. Bear in mind the how to get to gold in 60 days, not you will get to gold in 60 days. There is a bit of a path. The way to outline it, because this pretty much encapsulates how to get to platinum, is once you're silver, which as Chris outlined, you pretty much will be as soon as you complete a job from the time that you're accepted. That's sort of bronze is more like the purgatory stage here. Then you're, which is probably not the greatest analogy I could have made.
Really selling it.
Yeah. But I mean, silver. So once you're past the purgatory, welcome to silver, welcome to gold. But gold is usually the way that Chris and I, when we do these reviews, we do have a number of jobs that we look into as a minimum, but a lot of it has more to do with performance. So we'll say something like, we'll take a look into the jobs you've done. We'll look into your star rating. We'll look into, are you getting invites? Are some of our colleagues at work, taking notice, things like that. That's kind of the stuff that goes into gold. But if you follow a path and just kind of honestly, really just stick to it and continue to do good work within about 2 months, that's usually when Chris and I are like, this is a really strong candidate. Platinum is a little bit more ambiguous, where it's more about being handpicked. A good thing, and that sounds kind of like weirdly elitist, but that's not quite what it is. It's actually more that when you become a platinum writer, it's usually because you're working on so many internally managed accounts at that point that it makes more sense for you to be kind of within that circle. So for a lot of platinum writers, for example, if you're working with people like our colleague Liz really often, or Michaela and other people like that, you're probably already on your way there. Primarily because someone has taken notice of your work internally. They want you working on some of our internally managed jobs. But generally speaking, I would say that most of our gold writers are on like kind of a direct path to platinum always. So I think we brought on, we don't really share this out to the writer community, but I think we brought on maybe 3 or 4 in the most recent review. So that's about
I think
right.
so.
But there were quite a few golds. So, again, as Chris mentioned, there's a gap, um, but there's not really an average time. No,
Would it
it's more about, performance.
performance? Yeah. Would it be safe to say that if any gold members were curious about where they stand or about like getting a just anything, like they can reach out to support at
Oh
scripted.com
yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
say like, hey, am I like, or how do I do that?
Yeah, and people do, and I love those questions, primarily because we can take a look there. Now, when it comes to platinum, I think it's just more of a time game, and as I said, there's no average time, but meaning like in about like 5 6 months or so of just really really delivering high quality content, yeah, it'll probably be time. But usually, I'd say like a lot of our platinum ones are just gold writers that we're seeing so frequently who we're so commonly getting the highest accolades about that we move right up to there. But also I'd say as long as you make it to gold and you stick to that, you're guaranteed to eventually become platinum.
Alexandra again here. Should we reach out if we have a format specialty? Yeah, I mean, whether this is industries or badges, I think this would be more badges, wouldn't it, John? If you're talking
Yeah,
about formats,
I think that she's referring to the badges.
you should. If you think, I always say err on the side of caution when it comes to support. We do our best with trying to get back to everybody and trying to get those to the right people. So definitely reach out to support at scripted.com or use the chat bubble on the website. If you are sure you have one, or you say, hey, can I get a badge? Or I think I'm really good at, I've done a lot of tune-ups, I've gotten good feedback, whatever the case, yeah, let us know. Another one from Casey here. John, you go for that one.
Are deadlines for client feedback or approval changing at all?
So are deadlines for client feedback or approval changing at all? So for that one, I don't believe so. On the current iteration, it's 24 business hours that the customer, and that's true for standard priority rush jobs. That's one thing that's constant, is the customer has 24 hours to submit back for revisions. If you're getting revisions directly back from the customer, they have 24 hours to do that. Other than that, to accept the job, they still are going to have the 14 days. As with everything, we're going to be reviewing things and making sure that we're always kind of trying to hit the right mark on every aspect of the system. But that 14-day, which I imagine is probably where this question was directed, as far as I know, that's not changing. This would be a good example of something that maybe you could send it into support at scripted.com. One of us will see it, and then we'll ask in our internal communications and get a more solid answer on that.
Yeah, I think that that's accurate. I don't know that there is any discussion about it changing. I do know that the writer community has expressed their feelings about this in the past. A lot of that decision for us, I don't think was made with the intention of creating any form of imbalance, but more as a direct result of our clients' requests. A lot of the time, the clients that you're working with on Scripted are companies who go through numerous rounds of internal approval before they can even go back to, say, your piece and then request revisions. And then it has to go through that again. And that's unfortunate. And I get that. And, obviously we try to, it's better for us too when clients review work and accept it sooner. But as of right now, I don't know. But feel free to reach out to us at support, and I can see if I can get some more information about it for sure.
Okay, from Dion here, is the work jobs pretty steady, or does it depend on what level one makes it to per se? Okay, so yeah, I mean I guess kind of a mixed answer there. So your opportunities for jobs are going to increase the more that you level up. That just kind of comes with the territory. because your profile is going to get better. You're going to get reviews that are going to show on your profile. You're going to have more contact with different customers, and you're going to have more interaction with us, which is something that really sets Scripted apart from every other platform, is that you have kind of a direct line to us, and we'll work with you as an intermediary on certain accounts. So people find that it's steady if they stick with it. I mean, are you going to get flooded with jobs right off the bat? Maybe not. It depends on the time of year. It depends on a lot of things. John probably has more insight to that as well. But what I can tell you is that as long as you have optimized your profile, you're reaching out to us, you're kind of doing everything professionally and as much as possible, that's going to maximize your chances of getting that steady work.
Yeah. And I think, is the work steady? Yeah, I think it really also depends on performance. One of the things that I tell a lot of new writers, I don't know if we've got some older writers here, obviously in the chat, what's up? But for some of the newer ones who maybe did an onboarding with me, you might remember this when I was talking about it. But the way that the most successful writers on Scripted, the people who are making the most money as freelancers on Scripted, have done so is by building relationships. So if you are essentially coming here with the anticipation that by doing nothing, you will continue to get a good amount of work, you actually, as Chris said, you very well might find those expectations met. But if you kind of take your fate in your own hands here and really reach out and start to build those relationships with clients. I've been with Scripted for 7 years this March. I'm working with writers today who are been with Scripted longer than I have been on Scripted, some of which have the same clients that they've had since before I was here. And they did that by building that relationship. So use messages is like my number one pro tip to new writers. When Chris and I review, all kinds of jobs, we look at them, and it's always the writers who are really, really welcoming. Hey, my name's John. I just grabbed the job, excited to start work on it. Let me know if you have any questions. You'd be surprised how far that goes with a lot of clients. I think it's because, as many of you know, as freelancers, and I know from being a former freelancer myself, is like, it's kind of a wild world out there. It's the Wild West if you're out there hiring a freelancer. And I think a lot of clients, by the time that they get to Scripted, have had a bad experience in other places, at least once, by the time that they decide to use Scripted as a platform. And so for, you to be there to be welcoming really says a lot, because for many of them, they just want to know that their work is finally in the right hands. Maybe they've been trying to do it themselves. Maybe they hired a freelancer, it didn't work out. Maybe they went to something like Fiverr and got what they paid for. And there's a lot of different things that can happen like that. And I think by the time that they just get a message from somebody who seems confident and present, they'll be back. So yeah, it doesn't really depend so much on the level. It depends on how much you engage on the platform with the clients. Because remember, we also put you in touch with them. There's not a stone wall between you and the clients. You can message them from the very first moment that you take the job.
And in case there's any newer writers here too, he's referring to messaging that's built into the job. So when you click into the job from your profile, there's actually a messaging section. Now everybody attached to the job will see that. So that means you, that means the editor, if there is one, that means the customer, and anybody who has access to any of those accounts. Yeah, it's really, and especially now, right? After these last 2 years, there's more people working remotely than ever, working online. And the best business is done in person. That never changes. So my advice with that, to sort of underline what John was talking about, is if the best business is done in person, try to replicate that as much as possible in the platform, or with any of your stuff that you're doing digitally.
Yeah. So in other words, it's about reaching out, communicating with the team, not with the team, but with the client. So just to reiterate here, when you take a job on Scripted, you have a direct line of access to that client via messages. We don't recommend that you reach out to them off platform. Obviously, that's restricted and not something that we're going to encourage here. But you do have messaging via the Scripted platform that you can reach out to them. By doing so, one, you're not only setting up a possible relationship with that client in the long run, which means repeat business for you, but it's also just essential to communicate. I mean, the nature of freelance writing on the internet means that you're going to be dealing with clients who, if they were capable of writing a perfectly lucid, content brief, they wouldn't need to hire a freelance writer in the first place. So you're going to need to reach out to them, communicate, and I think you'll find pretty quickly that's going to be what gets you more and more work. But to go back to the original questions you had, yeah, I think it's relatively steady. It's just more about what you do and how you play the cards that you're dealt on the platform for sure. And we try to build it that way as well.
And then one last thing I'll add to that is that counts for the smart match jobs and the proposal jobs. So some of you know what I'm talking about. For those of you that don't, there's two kinds of basic jobs. One is smart match, where it just immediately starts when you accept it. The other is the proposal, where there's kind of like a proposal that you sort of help build in a sense. That's not based on smart match. They're typically open to almost anyone, I think, based on how the customer set up that proposal. But you actually have to kind of craft a proposal and do that. And although it would be great to just sit there and get smart match jobs all day long, I can tell you that a lot of writers that have found some of this long-term success that John's talking about have put the time in to really grab those proposals and focus on it in a way that's like kind of telling the client or the customer what you're going to do for them, more so than just talking about yourself and how good you are. So that's kind of a proposal tip there, but just the sort of overall tip here is get anything that you're qualified to write and really knock it out of the park, regardless of what kind of job it is or how much prep work you have to do for it. Do that, because that's really going to help with this too.
All right. Will all time zones across the globe be available for us in the settings? Yeah, I think that's actually one that we do have like currently in the dev queue.
It is actually a ticket that I just put in, Esther. Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware of it because there's already a lot of time zones in there, but somebody had reached out the other day and said, Atlantic time is missing. And so then I was like, oh, well, how many other time zones are missing? So that's definitely something that's in the hopper. Is the Platinum Slack channel still operating? Okay, so we use Slack at Scripted, and there's a couple of internal channels, one for the Platinum writers and then one for the editors as well. So the answer is yes. Michael, this is Mike, right? Michael or Mike?
Yeah, that's Michael.
Yeah. He was on the last one too. What's up, Mike? So it is, but Slack has changed the way that they absorb and interact with like outside organizations and people. We're still trying to figure out exactly what that means and how we can best invite people to where they can just stay in the channel and not have to worry about like, oh, your trial's expired. So it is still operating, but we have to figure out what we need to do to make this accessible long term and not have it work in this new way that they've changed.
Is there a way to use our approved jobs in our portfolio if they aren't in the published column? This one really depends. If the client has not added a byline to the job that attributes it to you, then you weren't able to use it because you actually essentially relinquish those rights when you submit the content. So just like any other content that you may have done as a freelancer, if that client then owns the intellectual rights to it, then you can't use it. But in the cases where you do have one that is attributed to you, you will be able to use it in your portfolio. But primarily, yeah, we look for attribution when we approve samples.
Could they ask the customer for permission?
We've said in the past that that's fine, but my main thing is I would say, at least from experience, is um, maybe judge use your own kind of judgment there to determine whether or not that's the right thing to do in that scenario. If that client seems open to it, then that's fine, but probably not every single client that you work with. Asking them every single time if you can use it is probably wise.
From Anne Marie here. When you receive an invitation, should you deny it if you can't write it, or should you just ignore it? So, yeah, this is actually a really interesting question. I mean, obviously, kind of the unspoken thing here is if you can't write it, then don't accept it. That's definitely something that we watch for and look for. But yeah, should you ignore it or deny it? I would say my gut says to deny it. What do you think, John?
Yeah, you can deny it. I think that a
There's not
lot
really a
of
penalty like that's working in the background that's going to impact future
if you don't respond to it,
opportunities.
it'll actually deprecate on its own within a certain time period. While you were responding to it, I was trying to remember the time period, and I can't off the top of my head. But message me support at Scripted.com. I'll tell you. But but off the top, no, not sure. But I do know that it deprecates after a period of time. So maybe ignoring it or denying it are both fine. It doesn't really matter in this case. But yeah, the main important thing, as Chris had mentioned, is it's probably not wise to claim a job that you.
That's why I love this question. I can tell this person understands that it's super not professionally cool to take jobs that you're not qualified to write.
Yeah, which happens
I
a
wouldn't.
little more than we're comfortable with, for sure. Okay. Will we be to performance results for projects we complete? So
So there
probably
was a
how
typo
to.
there.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's Michelle was saying, will we have access to
Oh yeah,
performance
yeah, yeah, yeah.
results?
No, exactly. Yes. So that's a great question. It's one that we've actually talked about internally. Here's the thing. One, it puts us in a tough situation. I'm gonna basically, bring you guys into the fold here of the discussion itself, which I think is kind of interesting. And then also tell you a little bit about where we're at with it. So basically, it works like this. In my experience, I've been tasked many times. Maybe some writers here have even directly asked me for feedback. Um, I'd say about 99% of the time that I go and try to get that feedback, I don't get it. The 1% of the time that I do get it, it's not terribly constructive. So it's one of those things where we would need to potentially put clients at risk. Obviously, not with you, Michelle, but like let's say there's a new writer who is frustrated and they got their first negative piece of feedback. We don't want them, we don't want that client's anonymity to be at risk. So of course we could then maybe provide anonymous feedback, but as I said before, like in my experience, very, very rarely do we get super, super constructive feedback. But I do know that more than anything, to good writers, having constructive feedback is positive. So that's actually something more internally we're working on, and obviously is partially responsible for the invention of Chris Baker. Is that we've got a guy now to do that. And, we're actively trying to reach out more to let writers know about feedback that we get when it is constructive, and also provide our own. There's a little bit more that's going to be happening with that in the coming months. I can't spoil anything about it yet because I don't even know if I have approval to do so. So I'm not going to say it. But yeah, there will be a lot more. In short, there will be definitely a lot more feedback opportunities coming down the line for sure.
I like how I was created. Like they identified a need, and then so I'm a replicant. They just
I went with
like
other synonyms at first in my mind, and then chose created. But yeah,
are our recent writing samples on the portfolios no longer updating automatically. Mine are all about a year old. Even the ones I have with bylines are not showing up. John, I believe that the current iteration of Scripted, the writer has to, or editor has to, update their samples manually. Is that right?
yes, yes. Actually, I was sitting there I was sitting there trying to think, like, what is Alexandra talking about? And I realized what this is referring to. Um, some years ago, maybe 2, 3 years ago, I don't remember now. But originally, if a client um, had approved a writing sample to show up on the writer's portfolio, it would automatically do so. We did disable that, and the reason for that is it would end up with some of our more prolific writers would just have like an endless line of spam of every project they've ever done. And then the question became like, are these really their best writing samples, or are they just here's everything I've ever written on Scripted in one thing? And so we kind of decided that maybe having a curated portfolio is better than just sort of a mishmash of various writing samples. So, but the ones that aren't showing up is curious. I'm not sure whether, I think I answered at least part of your question. I'm not entirely sure I know what you mean by the ones that aren't showing up. So definitely send me a message on support about that, and I'll take a look into it. I have a suspicion I know what it might be, but I'm not sure from the question itself.
Just as a side note that I'm going to record for posterity, in the comments, our editing team is rewriting the book of Genesis. Thanks to you, John.
Yeah. And Chris was good. Why do I have to fill out my profile? Do I have to use my own picture and name? Sure. Let me jump on this one here. So there's a couple of things about this. One, obviously there's the natural answer, which is coming from someone who works at Scripted, which is that's how we do. Like we are different than a lot of our competitors. We don't want anonymity for our writers. Obviously, we allow pen names and things like that. Obviously, we want to protect writers who maybe have private issues. I'm not going to go into examples, but I know one person in particular who had reached out to me who had some kind of weird mishap on the internet. They asked if it was okay to have like an anonymous style photo in that person's case, of course. But we look at Scripted and your Scripted portfolio as being something that you can actually use in your freelance career. And so, in a sense, it's like asking, why would you have to have a picture of yourself on LinkedIn, right? Like, it's like, well, so that when you show up at the interview, people know who you are. It's kind of directly attached to that. But again, pen names, right? Of course, we're writers, you're writers, pen names are fine. You will actually have to, of course, use your real name on any tax related documents for Stripe and things like that. As for picture, that's a tricky question. I will say, once again, probably best to just use your picture. I can tell you that some data that we pulled 2 years ago seemed to indicate that 95% of our clients only picked people who actually had a picture of a person. I wouldn't advise like using a picture of Gina Davis as your profile picture, which
what a pull.
Not a poll, actual example of something I've encountered.
I stand corrected.
It took us quite a while to realize that Gina Davis wasn't on Scripted, but
the truth is out there.
truth is out there.
Can they use? So say somebody really needed to, because this has actually come up in an onboarding, and what I said was, if you truly can't use your name and your real picture, then just use a nice looking photo of a human being.
Yeah. I mean, but again, too, just to clarify, don't use it as a backdoor to hopping on the platform if you're not legally able to use Scripted. Like, we will catch you. It happens all the time. Don't.
It just happened yesterday.
Go somewhere else. Yeah, it happened, and we're good at it. Like, we're really good at it. We'll find you right away.
We know. Fake profiles.
If you're doing stuff for self-protection, and we're not out to invade anybody's privacy. But why to fill out your profile? It'll get you work. Having a blank profile will not get you any work whatsoever. There's just too much competition, and you're special like everybody else here, and having your individual uniqueness shine through in your profile is going to get you work. And I know that sounds cheesy, but you'd be surprised how much of a difference it makes. Our clients are picking writers based on their skills, but also on who they are. So obviously, filling it out will really make a difference.
And I think we had one last question here from Dion again. Thank you.
Sure.
You have really good questions, Dion. So, does your platform have a code of conduct? Yes. I'll pass the rest of that to John.
We do. Yeah, we've got a code of conduct. I can give you the link. I think this is like one of those links where if I said it, it would be weird, HTTPS/. It's like but I can get you the link specifically. But primarily the code of conduct is a lot of it is common sense. We expect you to be professional to clients that you engage in. One big thing that we say all the time, and unfortunately we don't see it as much as we would like, but we want our writers to treat their clients as if they are their private clients. I think sometimes freelancers have a tendency to viewing being on a platform as being separate than being a freelancer. But as you guys can tell, we're real people, and so we speak to both ends of that. And we make it easier. Obviously, you don't have to chase payments. You can pretty much find a bed of work without trying to hunt it down endlessly. All we ask in return is that you treat them with respect as well. And then, of course, don't try to poach them off platform. That's a bad look. Again, just genuine kindness and general kindness and kindness also to Scripted employees and things like that. Nothing too complex. But if you are interested in, say, some of the more like writer service agreement stuff, I can provide that to you. That's a little bit more in depth, but also relatively simplistic as well. So yeah, happy to provide that. I know that we pulled there as the last question.
I think that's the last question. One last little factoid I'm going to throw out. Again, thanks to everybody for showing up. It just occurred to me that with regards to John's example of the Gina Davis picture, I made an X-Files reference, and that's actually Gillian Anderson, not Gina Davis from Thelma and Louise.
I thought that was a weird take, but then at the same time, I actually just noticed that your hat says "relax." So
it does.
Perfectly timed zoom there. That could not have worked any better.
We need to get a raise for our producer.
A dad hat that says "relax" might be the most dad hat.
It's the dad hat plus one. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be doing this again in another 3 months with more news, more interesting stuff. Like I said, reach out if you have any questions. Support at Scripted.com. And, we'll see you tomorrow, as we do every day. And more importantly, relax.
Relax.